It is that time of year again when we conclude the year by showing the best and the worst films that we've seen, as all YouTubers do, but I like to do something a little bit different. Everyone likes to start off with the best movies they've seen and then end the year with a ton of negativity with the worst movies they've seen. And I like to do things a little bit different. I like to start off with the worst films I've seen and then end the year with a little bit of positivity with the best films I've seen. So, with that, let's get into the 11 worst movies I have seen this year. Let's get into it. So, before I begin, a couple things I would like to point out. One, I have not seen every single movie that's come up this year. So, if there's a movie that you feel is missing off this list, one, I may have decided that it wasn't that bad, or two, I probably haven't seen it. And I don't like to throw movies on this list unless I haven't seen it. And the other thing is, while some of these movies are personal opinion, I'm not going to hide behind that. Some of these movies I do feel are so awful that they are just complete shit. So I always think it's a little like, what's the right term without being completely offensive? I always feel like it's a lousy, cowardly way out of saying, this is just my opinion. No, some of these are truly awful movies that should not be watched. But, yeah, and then I'm doing a separate video on the good movies that I saw this year. With all that being said, let's get into the dishonorable mentions. A lot of people like to throw those in between 2 and 1. No, I'm starting off with the dishonorable mentions. These almost made it onto the list, but didn't quite for some reason or the other. And the first dishonorable mention is Lift. This came out at the beginning of the year, and look, I like to give credit where credit's due. I'd like to point out that I find it very admirable, and even find myself rooting for Kevin Hart trying to break into action films, thrillers, whatnot, getting out of comedy, because you know, it's not that easy for a comedian to do so, but I'm always there kind of like, you know what? Good for you, man. Even though most of your attempts at action kind of fall flat, hang in there. And Lift's one such movie where he tried doing this like Ocean's 11 type movie that honestly kind of falls flat. There are some good scenes, but like there's an entire third act. When you think about it, it's like, why did you do this? Like, seriously, you didn't need to do this entire third act. It's just, it makes no sense when you actually think about what they wound up doing. And so it's just, it was a disappointing movie that could have been his hit he needs to get him out of the comedy world and into the action thriller world, but yeah, no, this one wasn't it. Then the next one is Argyle. This one I was really excited for, but honestly, when you look at the cast and you look at the director, a guy who did movies like The Kingsman, Kick-Ass, X-Men First Class, this felt like it should have been a home run, and it wasn't. Just way too much CGI. I felt some of the characters were a little bit unbelievable, and while I absolutely love Sam Rockwell in this movie, and the cast for the most part was pretty decent, I was just expecting a higher caliber out of Matthew Vaughn than I got from this movie. So, it's watchable, and I don't think it was that terrible, but it was disappointing. And then the next dishonorable mention is Arcadian. The trailers to this movie insinuated that this was going to be like a post-apocalypse after the smash, monsters hunting this dad and his two sons, and they're trying to survive in this, brutal post-apocalyptic world. And in reality, what this movie is about is the struggle of two boys trying to find themselves and learning how to, grow up in a, desolate world. And you get some monsters every now and then, but, it felt more like a YA novel than it did, a family trying to survive against these brutal monsters. Are the monster effects interesting? Yes. Nicolas Cage is barely in this movie, and I really did not give a rat's ass about the plight of these two young boys. I was expecting a different movie from the trailer than what I got. And then the last dishonorable mention, I really wanted to put this on the 11 list, but a couple of movies just knocked it out, and that was Night Swim. This was such a disappointing movie. The first teaser trailer showed promise, and then the main trailer was like, ugh. Teaser trailer was better, and then I finally saw the movie, and it's just like, okay, Wyatt Russell, you could have done better. Like, not your performance, you could have chosen a better horror movie. I mean, hell, Overlord was a great pick for you. But, like, Night Swim, this movie was just ridiculous. The overall, like, oh, this is what is actually the case. It was just, really? Really? And yeah, say it out loud, a haunted swimming pool is just stupid. But I mean, I was kind of hoping for a little bit more, and ultimately this was just a really disappointing movie. So, on to the 11 worst movies I saw this year. So coming in at 11 is Rebel Moon Part 2, The Scargiver. Now I know last year I had mentioned the first Rebel Moon in the best movies I saw of 2023. I think it was an honorable mention, and like, I was a little bit over optimistic about my time with watching Rebel Moon Part 1. And keep in mind, I have not seen the director's cuts of either one yet. But watching the theatrical cut of Rebel Moon Part 2, it's like, you had the first one do this build-up, this setup for, like, Part 2, and we finally get to Part 2. It's like, yeah, I only had to wait 2 months. I'm really looking forward to this. It's like, that's it? Like, that's the payoff? I mean, for starters, the worst part of this movie is the character development. They shoehorn in some of the most rushed, forced character development I've ever seen in a movie. Something I was desperately wanting to see with the first movie. No character development whatsoever. They just introduced all these characters, and then one of the lamest ass, okay, everyone tell your character development in this one scene. And it's like, we could have done this better. I mean, is it a fun movie? I guess there's some fun scenes in the film, but like the first one had a much better setup than the second film payoff. Now, maybe I might change my mind on the director's cuts, which add like, I think 2 hours to each film or something ridiculous like that. But as it stands right now, the theatrical cut to Rebel Moon Part 2, really disappointing. And also, Zach, way too much slow motion. Like, about 50% of the time in his movies, I like the slow motion, and then the other 50% of the time, it's just like, there's no reason why this scene needs to be in slow motion, Zack Snyder. So, anyway. At number 10 is Cuckoo. Now, I think I do have to spoil this movie a little bit. If you want to see Cuckoo fresh, just know I enjoyed the general premise of this film, but I felt the execution was really bad. But now I'm going to get into spoilers of Cuckoo. So, the idea of having this facility where they are like, they're experimenting with, or they're studying this rare, obscure humanoid species was kind of interesting. the idea of this like humanoid species that like takes over women's wombs to like breed their children, and they're like a cuckoo bird, I thought was a weird, strange concept that could have worked if the execution was done better. And the execution was not done well at all in this movie. Yes, the third act of this film was entertaining, I'll give you that, but kind of the build-up didn't work for me. There's a decent cast here, and I think there was a good movie locked somewhere in this film, but just certain scenes drag on for way too long. Certain elements do not land properly, and quite frankly, if I could have had the same cast, same cinematographer, same locations, even same general story plots, just pace the film out a little bit better, remove some unnecessary elements, introduce a couple of reworked scenes, I think this would have been one of the better films I saw this year. It was just right ingredients, wrong mixture of everything. That's kind of the best way to explain it, because I do like creature features kind of like this film, but this one just didn't quite do it for me. At number 9 is a similar themed film, Longlegs. Now, everyone raved about Longlegs. They're saying like, oh, this is the greatest movie about serial killers since Silence of the Lambs. And honestly, this has a similar problem to Cuckoo. Great cast, great setup, really bad execution. There's one of the biggest issues, and it's one of the few movies I actually did review on this list. And if you look back at my review of that film, one of my biggest criticisms is they tried doing things for shock value just for the sake of being shocking and edgy, and 90% of the stuff does not work. It's just like, why? It's like, we're trying to shock you. It's like, but why? And there's a few scenes that actually do work in kind of the creepy tone and like the vibe. It's just like, okay, like the movie kind of has me here, but way too many loose ends at the end of this film to even be able to forgive a few. Like, just way too many. It's just like, okay, it's over. It's like, well, what about this or that or this or that or this right here? It's like, nope, it's over. And hope you liked the last scene where we were trying to shock you. And it's just like, no, I'd rather have you like elaborate on what happened here, here, and here. And just certain characters, it's like, please do something, please do something, please do something, and they do nothing. And so it was just like, overall, great setup, great cast, but poor execution. And like Nicolas Cage, I was really intrigued by seeing him being kind of the main antagonist, but they decided to do like a parody of himself, I guess, because like, it's just like, I know you could have done something a little bit less comical here, and yet they didn't. And then, like, another thing is, they never once in the entire movie explain why this character is called Longlegs. I don't know, that seems like something you should have mentioned in passing in, you know, with one of the characters in the film. But yeah, if you want to see a decent like movie focusing on like a serial killer, watch Seven or Silence of the Lambs, because this one you can kind of just forget it. At number 7 is Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. Look, I might have been expecting a little bit too much from this film. You know, with Ghostbusters Afterlife, it's like, okay, that was a pretty decent third chapter. We're not going to talk about that one. Honestly, my criticism with the 2016 Ghostbuster film, which I've already done a video on it, is that they attempted to ignore everything that came before it. If they had just had it a sequel instead of a remake, I think a lot less people would have been offended at the film. But the fact that they were trying to just ignore everything that came before is like, no, we came up with all this. It's like, They did it better than the original. But going back to Frozen Empire, okay? After seeing Afterlife, it was like, okay, that was fun. What are you going to do with the next one? And they had their shot, and it's like, they didn't really want to take any risks. I mean, you have, like, this enemy that can, like, freeze people with, like, a wave of their hand, and at the end of the movie, no one dies, everyone gets unfrozen like they're perfectly fine. I mean, it's like, gee, like, no one knows about frostbite? I mean, like, you freeze one limb on your hand and you're losing that limb, so, I mean, like, there's no one even suffered any serious frostbite in this movie. That's how low the stakes were in this film. And finally we got a villain that wasn't Gozer, and it's like, really? I mean, it would have been interesting if you lost like half the team. It's like, yeah, we won, but half the city died, and, you know, there's actually some stakes, and, you know, they didn't do that with this film. It was paint by numbers, let's play it safe, we're not going to do anything risky with this film. And so, ultimately, it was a little disappointing, although I do have a pretty awesome popcorn ghost trap from the film that I got, so it wasn't all complete waste. At number 7 is The Crow. What can I say about The Crow? Well, for starters, this did not need to be a remake. The way the entire franchise has been set up is you could have the movie or whatever story you're doing follow a different character every single time. There was absolutely no reason to use the same character names from the original, I think it was 1994, Crow film, because that is a far superior film in every way. And you know, if they had just changed the name from Eric and Shelley to Bryce and, I don't know, Shannon, this probably would have been the second best Crow film, because there is some interesting aspects to this film. I do like some of the, you know, visual aspects to this movie, but the thing that hampered this movie the entire time is this isn't Eric, this isn't Shelley. Okay, these are like two other people, and if they had just changed the name, I would have been a lot more forgiving on this film, because there's really no similarities between this story and the story that happened with the first film, you know, the good film. This movie was like, okay, I mean, there's a couple of interesting things they're doing with violence and with action, but, like, the villains are completely different, the city location's completely different, the aesthetic is completely different. I mean, there's like, the only similarity between the original film and this remake are the two names. I mean, not even the main bad guy is the same. Everything is different about this film. And the fact that they felt the incessant need to claim this was a remake, it's like that was your movie's ultimate undoing, because every aspect of the original film is better. If they had changed the names, then it would not be comparing this so much with the original film. It's like, okay, obviously the original film's better, but how is this compared to the other ones? You know, it's actually pretty decent. I would say it's probably even better than the second one, but because of the two names, I know it seems silly, it's like, there's no way this is surpassing the first one, and you're only ever going to be able to compare it with this first one because it's claiming to be a remake of the superior first one. And so, yeah. And number 6 is The Union. I have kind of a soft spot for the spy films where one of the romantic couple is this world-renowned spy and the other one is this fish out of water, and when it's done well, it's amazing, like with Night and Day. But when it's done terribly, like with Ghosted, it sucks ass. And unfortunately, The Union, while not as bad as Ghosted, is still pretty bad, because the problem with The Union, even though I like the cast, it felt like a winning combination, there is not one iota of this movie that's original. There's nothing original with this film. Every twist, every turn, every character archetype, everything has been done before in better spy films. And so even though I like this general premise, guys, come on, you could have done something a little bit more interesting, a little bit more creative, and they just don't do it. It is paint by numbers spy film. I mean, you have seen this movie 1,000 times before. There's nothing original with this movie, unless you want to count the combination of these actors with each other. It's like, that's kind of original, having Halle Berry, Mark Wahlberg, J.K. Simmons, freaking Rorschach is in this. Jackie Earle Haley is in this. I mean, unless I'm really mistaken. But, like, that sounds like a really awesome, like, winning cast. And then you see the story is, like, Mission Impossible did it, Salt did it, Jason Bourne did it, Aaron Eckhart did it in one of his spy films. Like, done it before, done it. I mean, holy hell, there's a freaking knock list in this movie. Fans of spy movies are freaking tired and done with knock lists. Please stop it. At number 5 is a movie that I heard so many bad things about. It's like, okay, I have to watch this because I'm being told this is the worst movie of the year. And this is the most recent movie I watched. And I will give credit where credit's due. This is not the worst movie I've seen this year. But Madam Web is pretty freaking bad as a movie in general. I mean, okay. For starters, I really liked the idea of a Madam Web movie. I grew up watching the 90s Spider-Man animated series, and the Madam Web episodes were like always so trippy and creative and inventive to me. And it's just like, is she a villain? Is she a good guy? We don't really know. I always felt it was a great, fascinating character. So when I heard that they were doing a Madam Web movie, it's like, huh. Okay, who's playing Matt Webb? Dakota Johnson. Why? It's just like, why not hire like an actress in her 40s or 50s with gray hair? Like, why are we getting the woman who was in the 50 Shades of Grey films? I personally would have cast a middle-aged woman to have played Madam Web, and I think there was some potential here. Like, I'm really trying to show the benefits. I mean, I like the idea of Sydney Swede as this very specific Spider-Woman. It looks like they just ripped it right out of the comic book pages. And funny enough, I had no idea who she was until this movie happened. And it's like, I'm hearing everyone talking about Sydney Swede, and I'm like, who the hell is that? And then I looked on X, and it's like, oh. But it's like, you have this winning combination, and you only have like 3 frames of these really great looking Spider-Women costumes in the film. Why? Don't know. For some reason, this movie makes it feel even more evident that Sony does not have the rights to Spider-Man. They just have a rights to everything else in the Spider-Man universe. And, like, the worst aspect of this movie is some of the acting. Like, the main villain had some of the worst lines I've heard of any film character in any movie, period. Like, Dakota Johnson has some really bad lines. There's just some really bad lines in this movie. And the movie had some hope at a certain point when the first chase starts happening with the character of Ezekiel and the 4 of them. It's like, okay, this is actually kind of cool, and I can totally see this like Terminator cat and mouse game going on for the rest of the movie. That was the only time it actually did that, because like every other time, the second time is with this really obnoxious like Britney Spears song, and then like the third time, by that point I was checked out when they did this terrible like alternate rewording of "with great power comes great responsibility." It was so freaking lame. I just started laughing my ass off. It's like, oh yeah, this is going on the worst movies I saw this year, Liz. And they had the gall to do it a second time. Okay? To say it a second time. There was just so much stupid stuff in this movie. And it could have been a good movie, but yeah, no, it's not. And like, worst use of Sydney Swede I've ever seen of any movie. At number 4 is Operation Blood Hunt. Now, this was like a straight-to-video release, and yeah, I know what you're thinking. Dude, you should have known better. But look, the trailer actually had me intrigued. World War II, secret mission going to a Japanese-controlled island. They land, trying to figure out what happened to this division of Marines, and werewolves, okay? And it's just like, you know, this feels like good, dumb fun, but it wasn't even that. The acting, atrocious. The writing, atrocious. The effects. Some of the werewolves looked okay, but for the most part, the effects were atrocious. Simple leaps in logic, are completely thrown out the window. You know, the fight scenes, crap. The music, crap. Every aspect of this movie sucks. Okay? And it's like, honestly, I was hoping for a good, dumb, fun movie with this, and I didn't even get that. I just got this painful, bad time. I was thinking of like better werewolf movies that could have been made out of this premise, and it's a terrible movie. Don't watch it. Oh, and I also love that they desperately tried sequel bait another movie. Like, they thought they were starting a franchise with this. Yeah, no, this is not going to start a franchise, guys. At number 3 is an Aaron Eckhart movie called Chief of Station. Now, for the longest time, this was number 1, okay, believe it or not, because I expected more of Aaron Eckhart. And earlier in the year, he did a movie called The Bricklayer, which wasn't great, but it was good, dumb fun. It reminded me of like his earlier days of doing other movies like Erased, which is probably one of his better spy craft movies he's done. But like, he's had a couple of doozies lately in this year. I think he's had like 3 movies this year. One was good, dumb fun. The other one was like, there was potential, but it was like, eh. And then this one just truly, absolutely sucked. And the reason why this movie truly, absolutely sucks is because, 1, it wastes its pretty decent cast. Look, not everyone in this cast are Oscar winners, but I've seen them all in decent movies, and I was hoping with these people together, this could have been a pretty fun, low-budget spy movie. No, it's not. This movie is atrociously terrible. And one of the reasons why it's atrociously terrible is because the person writing this story has never watched even a spy movie before in their life, let alone done any research into actual CIA operations, spycraft, and whatnot. I mean, hell, if you watch the Jason Bourne films, you would have a general inkling, understanding that a station chief does not do the things that they claim a station chief would do in this film. Like, just the opening 10 minutes, you're just like, did I miss something? I didn't think station chiefs were this active on the field. Yeah, no, they aren't. I mean, it's like, look, I'm not an expert in CIA tactics at all. I'm not ashamed to admit that. But with the amount of spy movies I've seen, and the amount of spy movies I've been able to compare, like, yeah, pretty decent, pretty shitty, pretty good, pretty crappy, I could have half-assed written a better script with this movie than the person who wrote the script for this movie. That is how bad this movie is. And, I mean, like, some of the action scenes are really disappointing, especially when you have certain people involved in this film. It's like, look, I know they can do a good fight scene. You should have just had them, the stunt coordinator. Instead, it's just like, the entire movie was like a worthless, useless, throwaway spy thriller There's so many better spy movies you can watch besides this. There's so many better Aaron Eckhart spy movies you could watch over this. Hell, go watch The Bricklayer. I mean, it's stupid, but it's good, dumb fun, and you'll have a good time watching it, unlike this film, where it's just like, I was happy it was over. Absolutely happy that I was done watching it. Okay, we're down to the last two, and oh boy, was this one at number one for a long time after Chief of Station. This movie pissed me off to an unbelievable degree, and that is Under Paris. You know, the movie that supposedly Stephen King went, oh, this is like the best shark movie I've seen since Jaws. It's just like, really? Really? I gotta check this out. I mean, there's some pretty decent shark movies out there. Like, look, they're not as good as Jaws, but like Deep Blue Sea, lot of fun, okay? Had a lot of fun with that film. The Meg with Jason Statham, a lot better than it had a right to be. So, the fact that one of the most renowned horror authors of all time is praising this film, it's like, okay, yeah, I'll check it out. And yeah, I think Stephen King's taste is up his ass now. This movie was so bad. I mean, so atrociously bad. And like, look, the general concept of, oh, there's a shark in the canals of Paris and we need to get rid of it, it's like, okay, this is kind of interesting. But the movie starts off with the famous like trash pile in the ocean that was created during the 2012 tsunami that hit Japan. And in the movie they claimed, oh, this is because of man's, throwing their garbage in the ocean and global warming. It's just like, no, I'm pretty sure that specific trash pile was created because of the 2012 tsunami. I'm like 95% sure about that, and that's the type of movie this is. It's this like global warming warning, like you should be careful of what you do to the planet and whatnot. And there are movies that do that actually are pretty entertaining and do a good job of delivering the message without hammering it in your face so blatantly, like The Day After Tomorrow. Look, I'm not 100% on board with some of the things that the climate change, theorists or the climate change people are spouting, but at least that's an entertaining movie, and it does a pretty decent enough job of like saying, hey, maybe you should be more careful with your planet without hammering it in your face. And Under Paris is just so blatantly, to the point that they're just flat out lying about the giant trash pile in the ocean that was created because of a tsunami, and not because people are throwing their trash in the ocean. But that's not the only reason why I hate this movie. Okay, that was just like a little tease of why you should not like this movie. No, the movie has some of the most insufferable characters I've ever seen. Like, there's this group of environmental eco activists and these are the type of people that use terms, I'm a hacktivist. Okay, like, no one with any credibility calls himself that. That's just something that idiots call themselves. And like they're this like eco-terrorism group that claim that they're like, trying to save the world. And like there's a scene where it's like, I just shut off the engines to this fishing ship. She's like, wait, what? Like, you understand that like a lot of people who run fishing ships, they're fishing to feed their families, and now they're stranded in the middle of the ocean. Like, what? And like there's this one person who, it's the only decent part of the movie, when she gets killed, rightfully so, because like the police are trying to see if there's a shark in the canals and there's a locator on it, and she's like, turn off the locator. It's like, what? It's like, turn it off or the police will kill it. And it's like, yeah, no, the police would not kill one, the police won't kill it right away if they see it. They're just trying to verify it. And secondly, you're going to get him killed. And of course, she does get him killed because, you know, she had her friend buddy turn off the locator on the shark in the confined location. And oh, by the way, these are mutated sharks that are like breeding exponentially because of the evils of, you know, man-made climate change. That's not how climate change works, you idiots, but okay. And after this one character gets what she deserves, and it's like the only decent part of the movie where she gets bit, she decides to go down into the tunnels underneath Paris to test untested sonar equipment to try and draw the sharks out of Paris in a confined location with an audience of like 50 fellow stupid kids to watch her do this, and she's swimming in the water with these sharks saying, oh no, they're not going to attack me because I'm their friend. And of course, like, all of them get eaten because she was an idiot and she was the main antagonist of the film. And after she died, the actual protagonists of the film, they had like a 50% chance of actually succeeding now that she was gone. And the movie ends on just an abrupt ending cliffhanger. It's just like, yep, movie's over. And like, wait, what? And it's like, yep, it's over, and the world is screwed because of, you know, man-made climate change, and you should do better. And it's like, that's how they end the movie. It's just like, you and everyone who made this movie. I after watching this movie, I actually wanted to litter to spite the people that made this movie. That is how bad this movie was. Don't do movies like this where when the movie's over, people are going to actually go and try and litter just to spite a movie. Okay, just a simple tip for any aspiring filmmaker. And then at number 1, this movie, I was really toying between Under Paris and this movie, and it's like, you know what? With the director they got, with the cast, with the setting, with the property, the IP they chose, this was the most disappointing movie I saw this year, and that was Borderlands. I mean, look, getting Eli Roth, who I don't think is the greatest director ever. I actually think he's done some stinkers, but with the right role, with the right movie, I think you actually could have a winning combination. And with Eli Roth, with the Borderlands IP, having a sufficiently R-rated film, right amount of language, blood, guts, gore, and a right cast, you could have had a really awesome video game movie adaptation. But no. Everything about this movie was done wrong. The cast just felt all wrong. I mean, look, I like the cast, but Cate Blanchett felt like she should have been playing Lilith in her 5th or 6th outing, not her first outing, okay? And, like, I like Jack Black, but holy hell, he made Claptrap such an insufferable character that you look at Claptrap in the games, it's like, yeah, that's kind of funny, and you look at Claptrap in the movie, it's just like, would someone please shut him up, please? For the love of all that is holy, there's nothing funny coming out of his mouth. Please, why is he in this movie? That he just does not shut up in this entire movie. He just goes on and on and on. Nothing is funny. The jokes do not land. One of the worst casting jobs is the person they got to play Tiny Tina. It doesn't feel like Tiny Tina. It feels like a suburban spoiled princess saw Borderlands and decided to cosplay her at her local comic book convention. It does not feel like Tiny Tina at all. Okay? Kevin Hart, hey, I talked about this earlier. Good for him trying to get into action movies, but he keeps hitching his wagon onto the worst action films. And Borderlands lost so much money. It lost an insane amount of money, and that's one of the reasons why I didn't review it, because there's a good chance it's going to end up on the box office bomb list, and so I'll do a better review then, talking about if I think the movie deserved to bomb or not. Spoiler alert, it deserved to bomb, because just every choice they made with this movie did not work. I mean, hell, the main antagonist is very one-dimensional, okay? It's just so one-dimensional. I mean, they wanted to do, what was his character's name? Handsome Jack, I think, in the second one, but obviously they want to save that. I mean, some of the dialogue is so bad. It is so atrociously bad. Like, the third act, I was just, like, cringing the entire time because of the dialogue, the effects, some of the story beats. It's just, like, so obviously coming from a mile away. And then this fault that they've been trying to get to the entire time, they finally get in it, and you don't see what's in it, really. It's just like, oh, we're here. And now we're leaving. And now the planet's free. And like at the beginning of the movie, they said this is a lawless planet where no one's in charge. And after they take out this head guy who's running a very powerful private military organization, everyone's shooting off fireworks. Like, oh, the planet's free. It's like, you specifically said at the beginning that this is a lawless, unoccupied planet, and now you're acting like it was under an iron fist from this guy. Like, pick a lane, please. I mean, and it was rated PG-13, so like they took out all the blood, gore, guts, language, and all the action scenes really suffer because of it. And it's just overall, this was like a 100% bad movie. There was nothing to like about this. The only thing you could kind of say was decent about the movie was some of the production value with like the costumes and sets. That's really about it in terms of things I can find to say positive about this film. And so yeah, that's been the 11 worst movies I saw of 2024. What did you guys think? Are there any movies you wish were on this list? Are there any movies you think I should check out that are even worse than these films? Sing off in the comments down below. My name's Christopher Connell with 11 Hour Reviews, and that will be all for today.